Mako at SeaWorld Orlando is a 200-foot tall B&M hypercoaster. This coaster opened in 2016 and very well could be one of the best coasters that B&M has ever made. Now this coaster is definitely not the largest B&M hyper out there, standing only 200 feet tall, featuring less than 5,000 feet of track, and only traveling at 73 miles per hour. But Mako is still an incredible ride, filled with some amazing airtime moments. But we have to answer the question, is Mako the best coaster at SeaWorld Orlando? Well, let's find out. This past December, I had the opportunity to ride Mako 8 different times. 3 of those rides were in the very front row, and the rest were towards the back of the train. And I definitely have a recommendation on where you should sit when you take a ride on Mako. If you only have time for one ride on Mako, I would recommend sitting in the very front. Now, I am a back row rider, and generally prefer the back rows of various coasters, especially B&M hypers. But I actually felt like the front was a little bit of a better ride on Mako, which is quite surprising. The drop and the airtime may have been a little stronger in the back, but the overall experience and the feeling of speed was much better in the very front. But of course, if you do have time, try to ride Mako in the front and the back. That will allow you to get a much better feel for the coaster and truly experience everything that Mako has to offer. These trains are identical to pretty much every B&M hyper out there, featuring 4-across seating, but it only features 7 rows instead of 8 on most B&M hypercoasters. Now this doesn't make a huge difference in ride experience, but it was just something interesting I found and I wanted to point it out. Now before we do jump into the actual ride experience of Mako, I want to discuss the wait times that this coaster can command. Now, when I visited SeaWorld Orlando in December, Mako was running 1 train a majority of the day, before transitioning to 2 train operations before the end of the day. So you do have to note that if you're not going in the summer months, there's a very good chance that Mako will be only running 1 to 2 trains, meaning that wait times could potentially be longer. Now this is unfortunate, but it appears that SeaWorld Orlando only does this on days where the crowds are lighter. So it shouldn't be too much of an issue when you do visit SeaWorld Orlando. But just note, if Mako is running 1 or 2 trains, your wait time might be a little bit longer than you expect. But again, it shouldn't be too crazy. And the line for Mako, even with 2 trains, still moved very consistently and pretty quickly. Now let's run through the ride experience of Mako to see if this is truly the best coaster at SeaWorld Orlando. After some light theming in the queue, and after you've boarded the train and pulled down your B&M clamshell restraint, you begin your ascent up the lift hill. On an interesting note, this lift hill is accompanied by music as you ascend, helping to get you excited for the amazing ride to come. Following the lift, you descend down your 200-foot drop. As with any B&M hyper drop, this delivers fantastic airtime to everyone in the train, especially in the back. Now with this dropping a little shorter, I would say it's definitely not the best B&M hyper drop, because other B&M hypers with longer trains such as Diamondback at Kings Island deliver far stronger airtime going down the drop, and with the longer trains of other B&M hypers, the back row gets yanked over so much more, making the drop even stronger and filled with more airtime. But Mako's drop is still very good and still a highlight of the ride. You then reach the bottom of the drop and go into a overbanked turn. Now something very interesting with this valley is it takes a second longer for you to actually start ascending into the turn than on a normal drop. I don't know, it's kind of a weird experience. I definitely wasn't expecting it for Mako. I mean, it doesn't affect the ride experience whatsoever. It was just something very interesting that I noticed. You then ascend into your overbanked turn, delivering pretty strong positive forces. Now, I'm not against the overbanked turn, but I still wish it provided some airtime, but the next hill makes up for it. You then ascend into what is known as Mako's 5-second airtime hill, and this hill lives up to its name. You truly get 5 whole seconds of amazing floater airtime from that one hill. If you haven't experienced a 5-second airtime on some of these newer B&M hypers, it will literally blow you away. I did not expect the airtime to be that strong whatsoever. and I would go as far as saying that it's the best element on the ride. Following the airtime hill, you then enter your turnaround. It's a pretty standard turnaround, nothing truly special. You do get some decent positives, but it's definitely not a standout element on the ride. You then rise up into a trimmed airtime hill. Now the trim doesn't hit super hard, and you luckily still get some pretty decent floater airtime. The trimmed airtime hill is then followed by another untrimmed airtime hill with a slight overbank towards the end. It's definitely a good change of pace for the ride by offering a different sensation of airtime that's a little sharper and a little bit whippy. So overall, a good element. Then transition into a speed hill, providing again multiple seconds of stronger, sustained floater airtime. I would say it's similar to the speed hill on Orion, just toned down a little bit. I personally prefer Orion's speed hill a lot more than Mako's because Orion simply has way more speed going into the speed hill than Mako, meaning the airtime is a lot stronger and more sustained. But don't sleep on Mako's speed hill because it's still a very good element of the ride and does provide a good sustained pop of, I would say, almost in between floater and ejector airtime. So again, still a very good element. You then rise up into your mid-course brake run where it trims off a little speed but nothing too crazy. The mid-course brake run is then followed by a twisted drop that unfortunately doesn't give a ton of airtime. Now many coasters have a good pop of airtime coming off the drop from the mid-course brake run, but unfortunately it really wasn't there for Mako. You then glide up into an okay airtime hill. I expected it to have more airtime than it did, but you do still get a pop of floater airtime. You then transition into a slow overbank turn. Now this is the section of the ride where it's a lot slower pace and it's more about scenery than actual forces or intensity. And it does its job very well, giving you great views of your surroundings and the beautiful lake right next to Mako, before you finally glide into the brakes with a nice little head chopper right above you. Overall, Mako is a spectacular coaster from start to finish, mixing in great forces, a lot of airtime, and even a nice scenic finale. Overall, this coaster is one of the best B&M has made, and it is a must ride when you visit SeaWorld Orlando. But is Mako the best coaster at SeaWorld Orlando? Well, the answer to that is it's complicated. Mako is definitely the best coaster at its core, but with how unique Pipeline the Surf Coaster is, it's really hard to pick the winner between these two. But I'm going to slightly lean more towards Mako for this one, but Pipeline is an extremely close second. And you could even call this a tie between these two great coasters. So for Mako's final grade, I'm giving it an A. A great coaster because it is a very good hypercoaster and, in my opinion, is the best coaster at SeaWorld Orlando, but only by a little bit. If you enjoyed the video or found it informative in any way, drop a like down below and subscribe for more reviews and coaster content coming your way. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.